The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched vast and magnificent, its crystalline walls reflecting light from 1,000 distant stars. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, some breathing oxygen, others suspended in specialized atmospheric bubbles. At the chamber's center stood Ambassador Ji-hyun Park, the first human to ever address this ancient assembly. She wore a simple blue uniform, deliberately understated compared to the elaborate robes and bioluminescent displays of the alien delegates around her. Her dark eyes remained calm as she waited for the council speaker to acknowledge her presence. The speaker, a towering eldest named Voreth, whose species had guided the council for 12,000 years, finally gestured with one of his 4 arms. His voice resonated through translation devices implanted in every attendee. The human petition for council membership has been reviewed. We shall now hear arguments before the vote. Ji-hyun stepped forward. Honored council members, humanity comes before you in peace and hope. We have achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonies on 3 worlds within our system, and decoded the basic principles of quantum communication. We seek only to join the community of civilized species and contribute what we can to the greater good of all. She kept her voice steady and respectful. Behind her, holographic displays showed Earth's blue oceans and green continents, humanity's modest fleet of exploration vessels, and peaceful exchanges with the few alien traders who had visited human space. The Draknir representative rose from his section. His reptilian form towered even while seated, scales gleaming dark purple under the chamber lights. The Draknir Empire recognizes the human speaker, but we must voice strong opposition to this petition. Ji-hyun had expected this. The Draknir had visited Earth 15 years ago and departed after what they called disappointing observations. She remained silent, allowing him to continue. Humans are barely 200 years beyond their industrial age, the Draknir said, his voice dripping with disdain. They achieved space travel mere decades ago. Their fastest ships require months to cross distances we traverse in hours. They have no psionic abilities, no quantum consciousness, no biomechanical integration. They are, in every measurable way, primitive. Murmurs of agreement rippled through several sections of the chamber. The crystalline collective chimed their support. The void dwellers pulsed dark approval. A different representative stood, this one from the Peltharian Union. Her translucent form shifted colors as she spoke. Beyond their technological limitations, we must consider their nature. Humans are violent, emotional, and short-lived. Their average lifespan is barely a century. They spent most of their history engaged in warfare against their own kind. How can such beings participate meaningfully in decisions affecting civilizations that have existed for millions of years? Ji-hyun felt her jaw tighten but kept her expression neutral. She had prepared for these arguments, had spent months studying council records and precedents. She raised her hand to request the right to respond. Vorath considered for a long moment, then nodded permission. Respected representatives, Ji-hyun began, choosing each word carefully. You speak of our youth as a species, and you are correct. We are young, but youth brings energy, fresh perspectives, and adaptability. You mention our lack of psionic powers, yet we have achieved everything we have through ingenuity and cooperation. You call us violent, but we have not fired a weapon in anger since first contact. We have dedicated ourselves to peaceful exploration and learning. She paused, meeting the eyes of various representatives. You say our lifespans are short. Perhaps that is why we value each moment more intensely. Perhaps that is why we work so urgently to leave something meaningful behind for future generations. The Draknir representative hissed. Pretty words, but words are cheap. You have no understanding of the responsibilities that come with council membership. You would be a liability, constantly requiring assistance and guidance. Worse, your aggressive tendencies could destabilize the peace we have maintained for 7,000 years. Aggressive? Ji-hyun's voice sharpened slightly. We have been nothing but cooperative with every species we have encountered. We have shared our cultural achievements freely. We have asked only for the chance to learn and grow alongside you. Your cooperation means nothing, the Draknir countered. Your entire species lacks the fundamental qualities necessary for galactic civilization. You are too different, too unpredictable, too dangerous in your unpredictability. The debate continued for 2 more hours. A few voices spoke cautiously in favor of giving humanity a probationary membership. The gentle minds of Pereth noted humanity's artistic achievements. The wandering philosophers acknowledged human scientific creativity. But these voices were few, and quickly drowned out by the majority opinion. Finally, Vorath called for the vote. Jihyun watched as the display boards lit up with each species' decision. Red light after red light appeared. Rejection. 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 When the final tally appeared, 42 species had voted against humanity's membership. Only 5 had voted in favor, but the council did not stop there. Furthermore, Vorath announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. This council imposes travel restrictions upon the human species. You are hereby forbidden from establishing any presence beyond your own solar system. No colonies. No mining operations. No permanent installations of any kind. You may maintain your current settlements on Mars and Europa, but no expansion beyond these will be tolerated. Ji-hyun felt something cold settle in her chest. This was worse than simple rejection. This was containment. They were caging humanity within their own home system. You will be permitted to send trade vessels to designated exchange stations at the edge of your system, Vorath continued. But any human vessel detected beyond the boundary zone will be considered a violation of galactic law and dealt with accordingly. The chamber fell silent. Some representatives looked uncomfortable with this harsh pronouncement, but none spoke against it. Ji-hyun took a slow breath. She had been authorized by Earth's government to accept rejection if it came. But she had not expected this level of contempt, this deliberate limiting of human potential. She bowed formally to the council, a gesture of respect that nearly choked her. The human species acknowledges the council's decision. We will abide by the restrictions you have placed upon us. She turned to leave, but then paused and looked back at the assembled representatives. However, I leave you with one thought. You have judged us primitive and dangerous based on your assumptions about what we are. You have not considered what we might become. You have not asked yourselves what drives a species that lives such short lives to reach so desperately for the stars. The Draknir representative laughed, a harsh, rasping sound. Are you threatening this council? Human? No, Ji-hyun said quietly. I am simply suggesting that you may one day regret underestimating us. I hope for all our sakes that day never comes. But if it does, remember that you were warned. She walked out of the chamber with her head held high, even as laughter echoed behind her. 5 years passed quickly for the council species. Mere moments in their long histories. For humanity, trapped within their solar system, those 5 years felt like an eternity of frustrated potential. Then the Vrex came. They appeared first at the edge of council space, a scouting force that annihilated 3 monitoring stations before anyone understood what was happening. The Vrex swarm were insectoids, each individual no larger than a human child, but they moved in billions. Their ships were organic, grown rather than built, and they reproduced at a terrifying rate. Within 2 months, 7 council worlds had fallen. The defending fleets discovered that traditional tactics meant nothing against an enemy that simply overwhelmed through numbers. For every Vrex ship destroyed, 10 more appeared. Their strategy was simple and brutal. Consume everything, multiply, and move to the next target. The council convened in emergency session. The Grand Chamber, that had once radiated calm superiority, now buzzed with barely controlled panic. The Vrex must be stopped at Keltar Prime, insisted the Draknir representative, now wearing battle armor instead of ceremonial robes. If that world falls, they will have a clear path to the core systems. Keltar Prime has already been evacuated, reported a crystalline delegate. Their usually harmonious chimes, discordant with stress. Our fleets cannot hold against their numbers. We lose 10 ships for every 100 of theirs we destroy, and they just keep coming. Vorath, the ancient speaker, looked diminished somehow, his forearms moving in agitated patterns. We must reach out to every species in known space. Call in every favor, every alliance. We need forces we have never needed before. A Peltharian admiral spoke up, her colors shifting to dark blues and purples. Most species are already committed. The Void Dwellers have lost their entire home fleet. The Gentle Minds refuse to fight, as is their way. We are running out of options. Silence fell over the chamber. Then a junior wandering philosopher spoke hesitantly. What about the humans? The Draknir representative spun toward the speaker. The humans? The primitive species we restricted to their own system? What could they possibly offer? Jonau. They have been building their fleet, the philosopher said quietly. Our monitoring stations report significant military expansion. 30 warships at last count, with more under construction. 30 ships? The Draknir laughed bitterly. We have lost 300 in the past month alone. What good are 30 ships? Vorath raised a hand for silence. His ancient eyes, having seen empires rise and fall, now reflected something unfamiliar to those around him. Desperation. At this point, we cannot afford to reject any potential ally. Send a message to Earth. Request their assistance. The message reached Earth within hours. The response came back within a day. Ambassador Park would return to address the council. She walked into the same grand chamber where she had been rejected and humiliated 5 years before. But now, the chamber was different. Damage from a Vrex scout attack marred one wall. Many seats sat empty, their occupants dead or defending their homeworlds. The representatives who remained looked exhausted and frightened. Ji-hyun wore the same simple blue uniform. Her expression remained calm and professional as she approached the center of the chamber. She noted with interest that the Draknir representative would not meet her eyes. Vorath spoke first, his voice lacking its former authority. Ambassador Park, humanity's presence here is appreciated. We find ourselves facing an existential threat. The Vrex swarm shows no interest in negotiation or mercy. They seek only to consume and expand. We are requesting military assistance from all capable species, including yours. Ji-hyun waited, letting the silence stretch. Finally, she spoke. 5 years ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for nothing more than the chance to join the galactic community, to learn from you, to grow alongside you, to contribute what we could. I was told my species was too primitive, too dangerous, too unpredictable. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Draknir representative's scales darkened. I was told humans were violent and emotional. Ji-hyun continued, her voice level. I was told we lacked the qualities necessary for civilized space, and then you caged us, forbade us from expanding beyond our own sun, treated us like dangerous children who needed to be contained. Ambassador Park, Vorath began, but she raised her hand. I am not finished. For 5 years, we have watched from our solar system as you went about your business, secure in your superiority. We watched, and we learned, and we prepared, because humans are very good at one thing. We remember. We remember being dismissed. We remember being underestimated. And we remember being told we were too violent for your peaceful galaxy. She took a step forward. Now, you face an enemy that does not care about your long histories or your advanced technology. You face an enemy that simply wants to destroy you, and now you need the violent, emotional, primitive humans to help save you. The chamber remained silent. Some representatives looked ashamed, others looked angry. Most simply looked desperate. Ji-hyun let them wait for another long moment. Relief flooded through the chamber. visible in the changing colors and postures of the assembled species. However, Ji-hyun continued, and the relief turned to tension. We have conditions. The Draknir representative surged to his feet. Conditions? Your planet is just as threatened by the Vrex as ours? You would bargain while the galaxy burns? Ji-hyun turned her calm gaze on him. Yes, I would. Because if humanity saves the Council and its member species, we will not return to our cage afterward. We will not accept gratitude and then containment. If we fight, if we bleed, if we die for you, then afterward, we stand as equals. What exactly are you demanding? Vorath asked quietly. Full Council membership, immediately upon the conclusion of the war. All travel restrictions lifted. Equal status with every other member species, and a formal apology from this Council for the treatment we received 5 years ago. Several representatives erupted in protest, but Vorath silenced them with a gesture. The ancient being studied Ji-hyun for a long moment. You realize that if you refuse to help, the Vrex will eventually reach your system as well? Yes, Ji-hyun said, but humanity has learned to survive in isolation. We are very good at preparing for the worst. If we must face the Vrex alone, we will do so. But if we fight alongside you, we will be recognized as the equals we always were. Another long silence. Then Vorath looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. All in favor of accepting humanity's terms? This time, the vote was different. Green lights appeared across the display boards. 40 votes in favor. Only 2 against. 5 abstentions. It is decided, Vorath announced. Humanity is granted provisional membership, to be made permanent upon the successful conclusion of the war against the Vrex. Ji-hyun bowed formally. Then humanity stands with the Council. Our fleets will deploy within 48 hours. But I should warn you of something. What is that? Asked the Peltharian admiral. Ji-hyun's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held something the Council had never seen in a human before. Absolute certainty. You are about to learn why beings who live such short lives fight so fiercely to protect them. You are about to discover what humans do when we decide something is worth defending. I suggest you watch carefully, because we fight very differently than you do. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a council that had finally realized they might not have underestimated humanity's threat to peace. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for war. The human fleet arrived in council space 3 days after Ambassador Park's address. The council observers watched the ships emerge from faster-than-light travel near the staging point at Viridian Station and felt their first stirrings of doubt. The human vessels were nothing like they expected. Where council ships were sleek and elegant, built as much for aesthetics as function, human warships looked brutal and utilitarian. They bristled with weapons, armor plating, and sensor arrays. Every surface seemed designed for a single purpose: combat. Admiral Choi Min-jun commanded the fleet from the lead ship, the Soul's Pride. He was 53 years old, which the council species considered barely past childhood. His face carried scars from a shipboard fire during training exercises, and his gray hair was cut military short. When he met with council commanders via holographic link, several of them struggled to take him seriously. Admiral Choi, said Commander Velthara of the Peltharian fleet, her translucent form shifting through diplomatic colors. We are grateful for humanity's assistance. We have prepared standard formation positions for your vessels. You will be integrated into our 3rd defensive line at Sector 47. Min-jun studied the tactical display showing council fleet positions. He remained quiet for so long that Velthara wondered if the translation system was malfunctioning. Finally, he spoke. With respect, Commander, your defensive lines will not work against the Vrex. Velthara's colors shifted toward indignant red. Our tactics have been refined over thousands of years of naval warfare. They are proven effective against opponents who think like you do, Min-jun interrupted. The Vrex do not follow conventional attack patterns. They swarm. They overwhelm. They sacrifice thousands of units to achieve strategic objectives. Your neat defensive lines, just give them concentrated targets. Then what do you suggest? Asked the Draknir Fleet Marshal, his tone making clear he expected nothing useful. Min Jun highlighted several areas on the tactical map. We split into smaller, mobile task forces. We use hit-and-run tactics. We target their resource ships and breeding vessels, not their frontline fighters. We make them chase us, stretch their supply lines, and pick them apart, piece by piece. That is unconventional, Velthara said carefully. That is guerrilla warfare, Min Jun replied. It is how a smaller force defeats a larger one. It is how humans have won impossible wars throughout our history. The Draknir Marshal hissed his displeasure. We do not hide and run like cowards. We stand and fight with honor. Min Jun's expression hardened. How is your honor working out so far? How many worlds have burned while you stood and fought honorably? The connection went silent. Finally, Velthara spoke. We will allow you to operate independently, Admiral. Prove your methods work. The first test came within a week. A Vrex scouting force, numbering approximately 3,000 ships, moved toward the mining colony of Taraxis 7. Council forces prepared a defensive line with 200 ships, knowing it would not be enough but having no other strategy. The human fleet did not join the defensive line. Instead, Min Jun split his 30 ships into 6 groups of 5. As the Vrex force approached, these small task forces attacked from 6 different directions simultaneously. The human ships moved differently than council vessels. They spun, dove, and weaved through space with aggressive maneuvers that would have killed species with slower reflexes. They targeted specific ship types that council sensors identified as probable command or support vessels. When Vrex fighters swarmed toward one task force, that group would jump to faster than light speed, reappear somewhere else, and attack a different section of the Vrex formation. The council defenders watched in confusion and then growing amazement. The Vrex, so effective at overwhelming static defenses, could not adapt to this chaos. They broke formation to chase human ships, becoming scattered and vulnerable. When they tried to regroup, another human task force would strike from an unexpected angle. After 6 hours of hit-and-run attacks, the Vrex force had lost 40% of its ships. The human fleet had lost 3 vessels, all of which had deliberately rammed Vrex command ships after suffering critical damage. Council observers noted this with shock. The human crews had chosen to turn their dying ships into weapons rather than abandon them. This was not the action of beings who valued their lives. This was something else entirely. The surviving Vrex withdrew. Taraxis 7 remained free. But it was the second engagement that truly revealed how humans fought wars. The Vrex launched a major offensive at the Calandra system, committing over 50,000 ships. Council High Command sent everything available. 800 ships representing 12 different species, including the human fleet. Min Jun studied the intelligence reports and immediately saw the problem. The Vrex were not just attacking Calandra, they were using it as bait, drawing the council fleet to a location where the Vrex could overwhelm them with numbers. He shared his analysis with the council commanders. Most dismissed it. The Draknir Marshal openly mocked him. The humans see conspiracies because they think in conspiracies, the Marshal said. Calandra is a strategic system. Of course the Vrex are attacking it. Of course we must defend it. It is a trap, Min Jun insisted. Then run away, little human, the Marshal sneered. The real warriors will handle this. The council fleet jumped into the Calandra system and found the predicted Vrex force waiting. They engaged according to standard tactics, forming defensive spheres around the inhabited planets. The Vrex attacked as expected, in massive swarms that sought to overwhelm through pure numbers. For 3 hours, the battle followed familiar patterns. Then the trap sprung. Another 40,000 Vrex ships emerged from behind Calandra's outer moon, where they had been hiding powered down. The council fleet was surrounded, outnumbered 5-1, with no line of retreat. Commander Velthara sent a desperate message to the human fleet, which had remained at the edge of the system. Admiral Choi, we require immediate assistance. We are surrounded and— I know, Minjun said calmly. We saw the trap. That is why we waited. Waited. Our ships are dying. Yes. And while the Vreks are focused on you, they have left their supply chain exposed. Humans have a saying: never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake. Minjun's fleet, along with 2 council species who had trusted his judgment enough to follow his lead, jumped past the battle entirely. They emerged deep in Vrex-controlled space, targeting the slow-moving colony ships and resource gatherers that supported the Vrex war machine. Without their support vessels, the Vrex frontline forces could not sustain their attack. They began running out of fighter craft, out of ammunition, out of biological resources. The massive swarm that had seemed invincible started withering. The council fleet, following instructions Min Jun transmitted, stopped trying to fight the entire swarm at once. They focused fire on creating a single gap in the Vrex formation and then punched through it, breaking the encirclement. By the time the battle ended, the Vrex had lost 70,000 ships, including their entire supply fleet for that sector. The Council lost 300 vessels, painful but survivable. The strategic situation shifted dramatically. Without their supply chain, the Vrex could not push deeper into Council space. Their advance stalled. In the aftermath, Commander Velthara met with Admiral Min Jun aboard his flagship. The Peltharian's colors shifted through a spectrum that indicated deep thought and grudging respect. Your tactics are brutal, she said finally. You sacrifice allies as bait. You target support vessels instead of engaging enemies honorably. You hide and strike from shadows. Yes, Min Jun agreed. We do. It is not how civilized species wage war. Min Jun met her gaze steadily. Commander, humanity spent 10,000 years fighting wars against ourselves. We learned every brutal lesson that warfare teaches. We learned that honor does not matter if your species goes extinct. We learned that victory goes not to the strong or the honorable, but to those willing to do whatever it takes to survive. He gestured at the tactical display showing the saved Calandra system. You called us primitive and violent. You were right. We are violent. We understand violence in ways you cannot, because we lived with it for our entire history. And now that violence, that understanding of war at its most fundamental level, is what will save your civilizations. Velthara was quiet for a long time. Finally, her colors shifted to respectful blue. I begin to understand why Ambassador Park warned us we would fight differently. This is just the beginning, Min Jun said quietly. The Vrex think they have encountered another peaceful species. They do not yet understand what humans are. But they will learn. And when they do, they will realize they made a terrible mistake when they decided to attack a galaxy that contained us. The war reached its critical point 6 months after humanity entered the conflict. The Battle of Kalendros Nexus would determine whether the Council survived or fell into extinction. Kalendros was not a natural system but an artificial construct, a massive space station built by an ancient civilization now long extinct. It served as a hub connecting 17 different trade routes and strategic corridors. If the Vrex captured it, Council territory would be split in half, with their forces unable to coordinate effectively. The Vrex understood this as well as anyone. They committed the largest force yet seen in the war. 180,000 ships, supported by dozens of colony vessels that carried trillions of Vrex in various life stages. The Council assembled everything they had left. 900 warships from 23 species gathered at Kalendros. It was not enough. Everyone knew it was not enough. But there was nowhere left to retreat to. Admiral Choi Min Jun stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride, studying tactical displays that showed the approaching Vrex fleet. His command had grown from 30 ships to 60, as Earth had pushed every vessel they could build into service. It still was not enough. Admiral, his communications officer reported. Council Command is ordering a full retreat. They say we cannot hold. Min Jun had expected this. The Council species, for all their advanced technology and ancient wisdom, had never truly understood what it meant to make a last stand. Their long lives made them cautious. They would always choose to retreat and fight another day. Humans, with their brief decades, understood that sometimes there was no other day. Sometimes you stood and fought, or everything ended. Transmit to the Council fleet, Min Jun said quietly. Humanity will hold Kelendros. We will not retreat. Silence fell across the bridge. His crew, all veterans now of 6 months of brutal warfare, knew what those words meant. They were being asked to die so others could escape. Not one of them objected. Commander Velthara's hologram appeared on the bridge. Her colors shifted through panicked patterns. Admiral Choi, did you just say, "We will hold"? Min Jun repeated. Take your fleets and fall back to the secondary defensive line. We will buy you as much time as we can. You have 60 ships against 180,000. Yes, the odds have been worse. It was not true, but Min Jun said it with such certainty that almost sounded believable. The Draknir Marshal's hologram appeared beside Velthara's. For once, his voice held no mockery. This is suicide. Human. Noble. Perhaps. But suicide, nonetheless. Then it will be a noble suicide, Min Jun replied. Better than running. Now go. Before they cut off your escape route. He cut the connection before they could argue further. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for the battle they knew they could not win. But 40 other ships appeared on the tactical display, moving to join the human fleet. Ships from the wandering philosophers, the gentle minds who had sworn never to fight, even several Peltharian vessels led by Commander Velthara herself. What are they doing? Min Jun's tactical officer asked. Min Jun watched the screen for a long moment. Then, so quietly his crew barely heard him, he said, Learning. Learning. The Vrex fleet arrived like a living wave, massive and unstoppable. They moved as one organism, billions of individual ships coordinating through pheromone-based communication. Their standard tactic was simple. Swarm, overwhelm, consume. The human fleet, supported by its unexpected allies, fought like nothing the Vrex had encountered before. They had spent 6 months studying Vrex patterns, learning their communication methods, understanding how they coordinated. Now, they used that knowledge. Human ships transmitted false pheromone signals that mimicked Vrex commands. Sections of the swarm turned on each other, confused. Other sections hesitated, trying to verify orders. The perfect coordination that made the Vrex so deadly began breaking down into chaos. But there were simply too many of them. For every Vrex ship destroyed, 5 more took its place. The human fleet's ammunition began running low. Ships took damage they could not repair. One by one, vessels went dark. Captain Yoon Seo-jin commanded the Marine contingent aboard Seoul's Pride. She was 28 years old, a veteran of the Taraxis, 7 defense, and 3 other major engagements. When Admiral Min Jun called her to the bridge, she knew what he was going to ask. The Vrex command vessel is at the center of their formation, Min Jun said, highlighting it on the tactical display. It is coordinating their entire fleet through biological signals. If we can destroy it, their attack will collapse into chaos. But it is surrounded by thousands of other ships, Seo-jin observed. We cannot fight through that many. No, Min Jun agreed. But we can deliver a boarding party directly to it. One ship, traveling fast enough, and shielded heavily enough, might get through. Seo-jin understood immediately. A suicide run. Yes, I need volunteers for the boarding party. 50 Marines to fight through that command ship and destroy its central coordination node. Seo-jin looked at her commander for a long moment. Then she saluted sharply. Permission to lead the mission, sir. Min Jun returned the salute. Permission granted. Pick your team. 2 hours later, Seo Jin stood in the cargo bay of a heavily modified assault shuttle. Around her, 49 other Marines checked weapons and armor. They all knew they were not coming back. Not one had hesitated when asked to volunteer. Listen up, Seo Jin said, her voice calm despite what they faced. The Vreks think they have won this battle. They think we are just another species that will break and run when the casualties get high enough. We are going to teach them something important. Her Marines looked at her, waiting. We are going to teach them that humans do not break. We do not run. And when we decide something matters, we will burn our own lives like candles to light the way for others. The Council species watching this battle have forgotten what it means to truly fight for something. We are going to remind them. The shuttle launched, accelerating to its maximum speed and diving straight toward the heart of the Vreks formation. Vreks fighters swarmed around it, weapons tearing at its shields. The shuttle's armor plating began burning away, pieces of hull spinning off into space. The pilot, a young woman named Jae-hee, who had celebrated her 20th birthday the previous week, held the course even as her control console exploded and fire spread across the cockpit. She got them within boarding range of the command vessel before the shuttle's power core went critical. The Marines launched in individual assault pods, small capsules with just enough power to cross the final 100 meters. 23 pods were destroyed by defensive fire. 27 survived and punched through the command vessel's organic hull. Seo Jin's pod crashed through into a corridor filled with Vreks warriors. She came out firing, her rifle cutting down the insectoids before they could react. Around her, the surviving Marines formed a perimeter and began pushing deeper into the ship. The Vreks defenders were numerous, but they had never faced close-quarters combat against humans. Seo Jin's team had trained for years in shipboard warfare. They moved through the organic corridors like a knife through flesh, clearing room after room, despite mounting casualties. Seo Jin lost her rifle when a Vreks warrior tore it from her hands. She drew her knife and buried it in the creature's head, then picked up a piece of broken bulkhead as an improvised weapon. Behind her, one of her Marines, Minsu, took a hit that nearly severed his leg. He kept fighting, using his rifle as a crutch with one hand while firing with the other. They reached the central chamber, a massive space where the Vreks Queen Mind coordinated the fleet through biological signals. The chamber was guarded by hundreds of Vreks warriors, the largest and most dangerous of their kind. Seo Jin had 12 Marines left. They looked at each other. No words needed. They had come this far. They would finish it. The final charge was chaos and blood and determination. Marines fell one by one, but they kept pushing forward. Minsu, unable to walk, crawled toward the Queen Mind with his last grenade. A Vreks warrior cut him down, but not before he activated it. The explosion damaged the Queen Mind's primary coordination node. Seo Jin, wounded in 3 places and barely standing, reached the central organism. She planted the entire remaining demolition charge, supply, directly against its core. Around her, her last 2 Marines gave their lives, buying her the seconds she needed to arm the charges. The Vreks warriors swarmed over her as she pressed the detonation trigger. Her last thought was that she hoped it would be enough. The explosion tore through the command vessel's core. The Queen Mind died instantly, and with it, the coordinated assault fell apart. 180,000 Vreks ships suddenly lost their unified direction. They began attacking erratically, many firing on their own vessels. Admiral Minjun watched from Seoul's Pride as the Vreks formation dissolved into chaos. His tactical officer reported that Seo Jin's vital signs had ceased. He ordered the remaining human ships and their allies to press the attack. The disorganized Vreks could not mount an effective defense. The battle turned into a rout. By the end, 60,000 Vreks ships had been destroyed, and the rest had fled. The Council fleet, which had retreated to the secondary line, returned to find Kalendros still in Allied hands. They also found the remains of what the human Marines had done. Velthara stood in the ruins of the Vreks command vessel, surrounded by the bodies of Seojin's team. She counted the human dead. 50. She counted the Vrex dead. Over 3,000. Her colors shifted to deep purple, the Peltharian shade of profound grief and respect. She had never understood why humans fought so fiercely despite their short lives. Now, standing among the fallen who had given everything so others might live, she finally began to understand. Humans fought so hard precisely because their lives were short. Every moment mattered. Every sacrifice meant something. They had transformed their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. The galaxy would never underestimate them again. The war ended 6 months after the Battle of Kalendros Nexus. The Vrex, their coordination shattered and their advance broken, withdrew to their home systems. They would return someday, perhaps, but not in the lifetimes of anyone currently fighting. The Galactic Council convened once more in the Grand Chamber that had seen so much change. The walls still bore scars from the Vrex attack 5 years earlier, kept deliberately unrepaired as a reminder of how close civilization had come to extinction. This time, when Ambassador Ji-hyun Park entered the chamber, she did not stand alone in the center. She walked to a seat among the council representatives, taking her place as an equal. Behind her sat Admiral Choi Min-jun, now promoted to Fleet Marshal, and 3 other human representatives. The chamber was more crowded than it had been in years. Species that had sent only junior representatives before now sent their leaders. They came to witness history. The formal admission of humanity into the Galactic Council. Vorath, the ancient speaker who had once presided over humanity's rejection, raised his 4 arms for silence. He looked older now, his scales dulled by stress and grief. The war had cost everyone dearly. We gather to formalize what has already been proven in battle. Vorath began. Humanity has earned its place among us through sacrifice and courage. The debt we owe them cannot be measured or repaid, but it can be acknowledged. He gestured toward the human delegation. Ji-hyun stood, her simple blue uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and crystalline formations of the other species. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives who had once voted to cage her species in their own solar system. 6 years ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for one thing: recognition that humanity deserved a place among the stars. I was told we were too primitive, too violent, too dangerous. You saw our short lives and our violent history, and you decided we were not worthy of joining your civilized community. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. The Draknir representative, who had spoken so harshly before, kept his gaze fixed on his hands. You were right about us, Ji-hyun continued, and surprised murmurs rippled through the chamber. We are violent. We do have a brutal history. We are barely a few centuries removed from constant warfare against our own kind. But what you failed to understand is that this history did not make us unworthy. It made us survivors. She paused, letting her words sink in. Every species in this chamber developed under conditions that shaped them. The eldest grew wise over millennia of peace. The crystalline collective achieved harmony through perfect communication. The Peltharians learned cooperation through shared consciousness. Each of you was shaped by your worlds and your histories. Humanity was shaped by struggle. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. We faced predators, diseases, natural disasters, and eventually each other. We learned to fight, to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. And most importantly, we learned that sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to stand and refuse to yield, no matter the cost. Admiral Min-jun stood to join her. His dress uniform bore medals now, commemorations of battles the Council would never forget. During the war, many of you asked me why humans fight so fiercely, why we take casualties that other species would consider unacceptable, why we volunteer for suicide missions without hesitation. I have. Cross. Why? He looked at the faces watching him. The answer is simple. We fight that way because life is precious to us, because our time is short, Every moment matters. Every person lost is a tragedy we feel deeply. We do not throw our lives away carelessly. We spend them deliberately. Buying time for others. Protecting those who cannot protect themselves. You called us violent, Minjun continued. But humanity did not start this war. We did not seek out conflict. When violence found you, we stood with you, because it was right. Because we understood that sometimes, peace must be defended with force. Civilization survives only because someone is willing to stand in the darkness and fight the things that emerge from it. A new voice spoke up. Commander Velthara rose in the Peltharian section, her colors shifting to respectful blue. The Peltharian Union wishes to make a statement. 6 months ago, I stood in the ruins of the Vrex command vessel, where Captain Yoon Seo-jin and 49 human marines gave their lives to save this galaxy. I counted the bodies of the Vrex they killed while advancing through that ship. Over 3,000 enemies fell to 50 humans who knew they would not survive. Her colors brightened with intensity. I have spent the months since trying to understand how this was possible. I studied human history, human psychology, human military doctrine, and I finally understood something the Council failed to see 6 years ago. Humans do not fight for abstract concepts like honor or glory. They fight for each other. Every human who died in this war died protecting the person beside them, who was protecting the person beside them. All the way back to their home world and the families waiting there. That is what makes them dangerous, Velthara continued. Not their weapons or their tactics, not their violence or their history. What makes humans truly dangerous is that they care deeply about individuals in a way we long-lived species have forgotten. We think in terms of civilizations and millennia. They think in terms of friends and families and individual lives, and they will burn the galaxy to ash to protect those they care about. The Draknir representative stood slowly. His movements suggested shame, a posture rarely seen in his proud species. The Draknir Empire also wishes to speak. 6 years ago, I stood in this chamber and argued most strongly against humanity's admission. I called them primitive and dangerous. I laughed when Ambassador Park suggested we would regret underestimating her species. He turned to face the human delegation directly. I was a fool. The Draknir Empire offers formal apology to humanity for our blindness and our arrogance. You proved in battle what we should have seen in peace. That worth is not measured in years lived or technologies mastered, but in courage, determination, and the willingness to stand for what is right, even at great personal cost. Similar statements came from other representatives. The wandering philosophers, the gentle minds, even the void dwellers, who rarely spoke at all. Each acknowledged their mistake, each expressed gratitude for humanity's intervention, each welcomed humans as equals. Finally, Vorath spoke again. Ambassador Park, humanity's terms for joining the war have been met. Full council membership is granted. With all rights and privileges, all travel restrictions are lifted, and this council formally apologizes for the treatment humanity received 6 years ago. He paused, then added, but I believe the council owes humanity more than just an apology. We owe you a promise. Jihyun raised an eyebrow. What promise? That we will never again dismiss a species based on assumptions about their worth. That we will remember the lessons you taught us, paid for in blood and sacrifice. That we will honor the memory of every human who fell defending species that had rejected them. Vorath's voice grew stronger. The Council proposes the establishment of a joint military academy to be built at Kalendros Nexus, where your Captain Yoon and her Marines made their stand. Humans will train alongside all other species, sharing the tactical knowledge and strategic thinking that saved us. The academy will be named the Yoon Seo-jin Institute, so that no one forgets what humanity did when civilization needed them most. Silence fell over the chamber. Jihyun felt tears threatening and forced them back. The academy is a good idea, but do not name it after just one human. Name it after all the species that fought together at Kalendros. Humans did not save the galaxy alone. We fought alongside Peltharians, wandering philosophers, gentle minds, and others who chose to stand when they could have run. Honor all of them. The Kelendros Defense Institute, then, Vorath agreed. Commemorating all who stood together. That I can accept, Ji-hyun said. The formal vote was taken. This time, all 47 species voted in favor of humanity's admission. No abstentions, no rejections. Unanimous acceptance. As the session concluded and representatives began filing out, the Draknir representative approached the human delegation. He stood before Admiral Min-jun and Ambassador Park, struggling to find words. I watched recordings of the Battle of Kelendros, he finally said. I saw what your Captain Yoon did. What all your warriors did. The Draknir pride themselves on martial prowess, but I have never seen courage like that. If you had shown us this 6 years ago, if we had shown you 6 years ago, you would not have believed it, Ji-hyun interrupted gently. You needed to see it yourselves. You needed to fight beside us, bleed beside us. Watch us die for you before you could understand what humanity is. Perhaps, the Draknir admitted. But I hope in time we can move beyond the mistakes of the past. Perhaps even become allies, not just fellow council members. Min-jun extended his hand, a human gesture of peace. After a moment's hesitation, the Draknir grasped it with his clawed hand. Allies, Min-jun agreed. That would honor those who fell. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Ji-hyun stood at a viewport overlooking the repaired Kelendros Nexus. Construction had already begun on the new Defense Institute. The station that had nearly fallen would now train the warriors who would protect future generations. Commander Velthara joined her at the viewport. You were right, you know. In that first session, when you warned us we would regret underestimating humanity. But I suspect even you did not fully understand what you were warning us about. What do you mean? Ji-hyun asked. You thought we would regret it because you would prove yourselves capable. But the true regret is not that we underestimated your capabilities. It is that we missed 6 years of learning from you, growing alongside you, benefiting from your perspective and your passion. That is the opportunity we threw away with our arrogance. Velthara's colors shifted to warm gold. The galaxy is better because humans are part of it now. Not because you fight well, though you do. Not because you think tactically, though you do. But because you care intensely in a way we had forgotten was possible. You remind us that every life matters, every moment counts, every sacrifice means something. She paused, then added, You did not just save the Council from the Vrex. You saved us from becoming so detached and abstract that we forgot why civilizations are worth protecting in the first place. You reminded us that behind every species count and strategic position are individuals who love, who hope, who fear, and who deserve to be protected. Ji-hyun was quiet for a long moment, watching ships move around the station. Finally, she said, Humanity has much to learn from the Council species. Your wisdom, your technology, your long perspective. But perhaps we also have something to teach, as you say. Perhaps. Velthara's colors brightened with amusement. Ambassador, in 6 months of war, you taught the Council more than we learned in the previous 6,000 years of peace. The question now is what we will all become together. Humans pushing us to care more deeply. Council species, teaching you to think more broadly. That combination might be the most powerful force this galaxy has ever seen. As Ji-hyun returned to Earth to a hero's welcome, she reflected on the journey humanity had taken. They had gone from rejected and caged to respected and valued. But the greatest change was not in how the Council saw humanity. It was in how humanity saw itself. They had proven they could fight and win against impossible odds. They had proven their courage and their determination. But most importantly, they had proven that being underestimated was not the handicap others thought it was. It was an opportunity. A chance to surprise, a chance to show what hidden strengths exist in every being who refuses to accept limitations others place upon them. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They would not make that mistake again. But more importantly, humanity had learned to never underestimate themselves. And that lesson, more than any military victory, would shape the future of human civilization among the stars. The council that underestimated humans had learned their lesson well. And in learning it, they had helped humanity discover its true place in the galaxy. Not as primitives seeking approval, but as equals who had earned their seat through the oldest and most respected currency in the universe, courage in the face of impossible odds. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.